Hi, I'm Dave Anthony, and today we're going to break down the playoff series between the Dauphin Kings and the Swan Valley Stampeders. We can't do it alone. We need two experts to help me do it. So I'm joined via Zoom by Benny Walchuk and Darnell Duff. Guys, thanks for doing this today.
No problem, Dave.
Yeah, pleasure's mine, Dave. Thanks for having me.
All right, Darnell, we'll start with the Dauphin Kings. What are some of the strengths of the Kings heading into this round one series?
Well, I think overall it's a pretty deep team. I think the strengths really do start between the pipes, though, with Carson Cherepak. Led the league in wins this year with 30, had 6 shutouts. Went through a little bit of a rough patch dating back to the showcase, and probably a couple of weeks after, missed some time with an upper body injury, a bout of COVID. But he's come back. He's looked really solid as of late. When he's on, he's a real tough goaltender to beat. And then, you go to the back end, two of the top back end players in the league, Parker Walchuk, top defenseman. Colby Jaquette finished with, the top assist in the league. And then up front, led by Caden Bryant. So this is a very well-rounded team, probably the most well-rounded team I've seen since my time here. So I think this is a team that is confident. They're feeling good heading into the playoffs, and it's going to be a fun ride to see what they can do.
Benny, I know that you do a bunch of different teams, but watching Benny, I know that you do a number of different teams, but watching Swan Valley at their best, what does that look like and how do they play?
Yeah, when they play at their best, they are in your face, very good structure. I know with Barry Wolf, ever since Barry's came the last few years, it's all about structure. If they have good defensive structure, if they have a good forecheck, if they have good back check, if they do that right, they're going to win a lot of hockey games. So we showed that stretch where they beat Steinbach twice on the road, beat Dauphin. When they play that structured game, get the timely scoring when they need to, which hasn't come as much as they would like. If they get that timely scoring, also they get stops, which they have got lots from both goaltenders so far this year. So I think structurally, if they play good defensively, I think the offense will come, but they have to put it all together. And I know the last couple of weeks here before the regular season wrapped up, the inconsistency came out from the Stampeders. So hopefully this break will kind of take them some time to have some practices and fine tune that good structure that Barry always entails for these hockey clubs.
Darnell, Dauphin has secured first place. They had it locked up for a number of weeks now. How do you suspect them to play when it starts getting a little bit more ramped up, a little bit more, well, let's say meaningful? Do you expect the Kings are able to turn it on, or have they been turning it on the last couple of games to be ready for game number one?
Yeah, I mean, I think you date back to the final weeks of the regular season, 2 wins over Swan Valley and then 2 games to wrap up against Winnipeg Freeze. And I think, the team was in a little bit of a tough spot, not taking anything away from the Freeze. I think, they're a team that, improved and showed signs of improvement throughout the season. But I think it's tough, going in and getting prepared and, realizing who you're facing and what your opponent is. So, but at the same time, I don't put too much stock into those final 2 games where I don't think the Kings perhaps played at their best. I think they were taking some liberties, perhaps some, a lot of the talk is point nights. Guys are trying to stuff the point sheet when you're playing teams that are below you in the standings. But I think this is a group that with 8 20-year-olds, a motivated young group, I think, or motivated younger players as well as their veteran players. I think this is a team that's going to be, prepared. They're going to be mentally prepared. They're going to be physically prepared. I mean, Doug Headley has been in this business for a long time. If there's anybody that knows how to get his players ready to go, I think it's going to be Doug. So, I expect this team to come out firing in game one. I think they're playing all toward one common goal. They have a belief in what could happen this year, and I don't think there's going to be anything outside of, in between the lines on the ice that's going to stop them in trying to achieve that.
Benny, the Stampeders are obviously the underdog in this series. Maybe not too many folks outside of that locker room or that coach's room believe in this team. Sell me on why the Stampeders can defeat the Dauphin Kings in round one.
You know what? Let's talk about structure. No, Barry, I know 2019 had the offensive talent, but maybe a lot of people didn't think they could beat the Steinbach Pistons or even take the Portage Terriers to the brink of a Game 7 overtime loss. So it's I think just being prepared, like Darnell said. I think Barry's been around for a long time. He's gonna have his team prepared, and I think these first couple of games are going to be very, very crucial for both teams. I know a lot of teams, we go back to 2020, their playoffs were canceled. Last year, we didn't even play a playoff. So a lot of these guys on both sides, depending if they're 19 or 20, this might be their first dose of playoff hockey. Maybe if your midget or your U18 team wasn't very good, this could be your first dose of playoff hockey for 5 or 6 years. So I think these opening 2 games are very, very crucial. the Stampeders, like you said, can play that in-your-face style, can get some goals early, get off to an early lead in game one. I think this could be a very, very interesting series at the start. So then goaltending-wise, I know with Dylan and Colby, not sure who's going to get the start in game one. I'm sure they're still deciding that, or Barry knows who's going to start game number one. But whoever does, if they can get those stops early on, if they can contain this Dauphin offense, especially those guys in the back end, and stay disciplined and out of the penalty box, I think it would be a very interesting series, because I think Stampeders can be prepared, because they have one of the most prepared and one of the most experienced head coaches in Barry Wolf.
Absolutely. A couple more before we get into our series predictions. Let's talk about home ice advantage, Darnell. Credit Union Place can get rocking when there's a ton of fans in there. They make life really difficult for the opponents. Do you expect a huge crowd, and what kind of impact will that have, especially early in a series for a town that loves their MJHL hockey but hasn't seen a lot of it?
Yeah, for sure. A pretty rich history with the Kings. It's been unfortunate throughout the year. I think, especially with not having hockey for a full year and missing the playoffs. The first half of the playoffs in the prior season, you'd think fans would be coming back this year, packing the stands and that sorts of thing. But that's just, with COVID, some people are a little bit cautious. They don't want to come out to the rink. But I think when the Kings hosted their Ukrainian night a couple of weeks ago and had, just about 2,000 fans in the stands, I think that was a big tell of what you could see moving forward into the playoffs. I think there's a lot of buzz around this team. As you mentioned, this is a Dauphin community that loves their hockey. So I think the buzz is there. I think, the Kings organization is doing whatever they can on the ice to try and attract fans. Now, the hope is they join the team for their first round playoff run. I mean, it's also super intriguing. You're playing your Parkland rival, a team that, you had success against this season. You're playing them in the playoffs for the second straight time, I guess. You date back to that year when the Stampeders went to Game 7 of the Turnbull Cup playoffs. So I think this is a really intriguing series. I think the Stampeders are a good team. They're not going to be a team that Kings can take easily. I mean, when Benny talked about the structure, they have good goaltending. If they can find a way to dictate the tempo of this game or this series, it's going to be real tight. And I think fans should certainly buy in and are going to want to buy in, especially, leading up into Game 4 or 5, and if needs 6 and 7 as well.
Benny, let's talk about the games in Swan Valley. Man, that arena built in 1967, when they are pounding on the hollowness of those steps and they get it rocking. It's a fun place to be. And just talk a little bit about what it'll be like at home games for Swan Valley in the playoffs.
It's going to be exciting. I know the last time they played a playoff game was 2 years ago. I think they beat Way 10-0 or something like that, or 10-1. So that's the last playoff game they had at home. And I know you've seen it with our Steinbach and Swan battles over the years in the playoffs. Once you get further and further in the playoffs, they bring more horns in. I'm not sure where they get all the horns. They get loud. They blow them whenever they want. And everybody starts standing around the rink, and then everybody just comes in. I know with the restrictions being lifted here last few weeks or so, it's been seen more and more Stampeder faithful making their way back to the Centennial Arena, which is great. So I think everybody's just dying for hockey. I know the weather's getting warmer, the snow's beginning to melt, and it's going to be a chance a little bit more easier to travel around the Parkland region and come for both rinks. But I think the Centennial Arena is going to be rocking. I think the horns are going to be filled up with the air, and I think everybody's ready for some playoff hockey once again, because we talked about it. Wayway-Sakapa was the last series, and then the series before that, we lost in game number 6 against the Portage Terriers. So everybody's dying for playoff hockey again. I think everybody's just dying to get to the rink. The weather is getting, a lot of people are getting set for their seating here in the next few months, but they still want to watch some playoff hockey before that.
I love that. Shout out to the farmers across Manitoba as well. They love their hockey. All right, Darnell, give us a Dauphin Kings player you think is going to have a big impact on the series, and then a series prediction.
Yeah, I think, you have to start with the goaltender. I think, in the playoffs, a goaltender can certainly win you a series. At times he can perhaps lose you a series. Carson Cherepak, a guy, though, we haven't seen, we've seen a little bit in the last few games, Matthew Rathbone. He was actually injured, an upper body injury at the Centennial way back in the first half. He didn't play for the better part of 2 months, but he's come back. He's motivated. Another guy that is 20 years old. He's had a lot of offensive production for this team when he's been on the ice, especially in the last couple of games. So I expect Rathbone to come out pretty motivated, pretty fired up, along as well the other 20-year-olds. But I think a guy, when you talk about Swan Valley, this is a rough and tough team. They like to play physical. Rathbone is a guy that likes to play physical. He won't back down in any situation. So I expect him to have a real good presence, a real strong presence on this team. And when it comes to predictions, I really do think this could be a long series, but I think at the end of the day, the speed from the Kings, top of league goaltending, although Dylan Black and Kobe Grant not taking away anything from them. But I just think the speed of this team and the ability to find the back of the net at critical times, I think we'll see the Kings win the series in 5 games.
All right, Benny, same question to you. A guy we should be watching in the Stampeders jersey and a series prediction.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say. I'm going to go with the guy who is probably going to stand out and the guy that's maybe going under the radar. I'm going to go with Carter Coburn, of course, Stampeder captain, his heart and soul for the last 4 years. He's had a tremendous breakout 20-year-old season, and then you've seen some games. I know he had a 4-goal game in Neepawa early this season. So when he wants to take over a game, he can take over a game. He's physical. He likes to grit. So I think if Carter can play well, I think he can lead his team to some success here in round 1. And the under the radar player, I know on the website, Justin Keck. Justin Keck's got great speed. I don't think he's been utilized as much as they should here in the Stampeder roster. I think he can be a pretty game breaker, but I think Callum Fortin, I know he hasn't scored as much as he did in U18 level, but I think Callum in his final year of junior hockey, I think he, with his grit and with his good speed and just his tenacious ability around the net, I think Callum Fortin could be a real X factor for the Swan Valley Stampeders. And we talked about goaltending. Both goaltenders are, I'm sure Barry is happy to call upon any of those goaltenders. So I think those guys can be an X factor too. And my prediction, well, I have to go with the Swan Valley Stampeders or else I might not be allowed back in Swan River. So I'm going to go Stampeders in 7.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this today. Darnell, proud voice of the Dauphin Kings. Benny, the voice of the Swan Valley Stampeders. Guys, best of luck. And again, thanks for taking some time for us today.
Appreciate the time, Dave. And obviously best of luck to the Pistons as well.
Absolutely, Dave. Best of luck to you on your calls, and looking forward to a great playoff run.